Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, hello to
Mhm.
our teacher and our guest. So,
Good to see you.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. This is our eighth episode of Moments with Africa. And today we have a very amazing guest that I discovered on one of his lives on TikTok, doing an amazing job. I have been to his lives quite a few times, and people know him as the Father King. His name that his parents gave him Reabetswe Katleho Mogase. And I think in Kenya or in Tanzania and Swahili speaking countries, and I say this a lot in my episodes, the one name that we would give you is teacher or mwalimu. I'm sure you know the name mwalimu. And I feel that we are very lucky that we tend to have a lot of walimus coming to Moments with Africa. And this is why we do this. I personally do this because I want to learn. Many times I am creating content and I'm telling people, this is what happens in Kenya, in South Africa, in Ghana, Nigeria, in Africa. I'm in classes teaching students. And the difference with this is that I can just relax and learn. And this is why we are doing this. This is why I've been coming to your lives on TikTok. And I have been, at first, I was very fascinated because I was thinking, there are so many people attending the sessions. There are people who are crying during this learning sessions. There are a lot of people I felt who trust you. And there's this energy you exude that is very peaceful, and I get it as well. And I have to say that at first I was a bit conflicted because, first of all, I am not religious. I'm not saying that you're religious, but I'm just saying about myself. I'm not religious. And many times when I see people in a gathering where, there's a lot of emotions, there's conversations about spirituality, I'm a bit on guard only because I'm decolonizing. But this does not mean that I do not accept other people who are religious or anything, but I'm just cautious because I'm trying to find my own way. And I was a bit, okay, can I trust him? And I thought, okay, let me listen to more of your sessions and see why there's this where this trust factor is coming from. And one thing that I realized about your sessions is that number one, you're very inclusive, very, very inclusive. You accept people regardless of gender. So I realize it's not just women. You accept people regardless of their situations in life. And you're also very balanced when you're speaking about, this is what has happened to you, this is how you're handling it. You will still come back and say, now, can we go back and see how you got to this point? So there's this accountability factor. We've had this conversation before. And this is what I appreciate about you. And then I realized, okay, that's why I'm comfortable because it's not what I'm used to growing up in the church where there is, judgment. You are this, and you're a child, and you've already been told you're this, you're that, you're this. And so there's the safety comes from not experiencing that in your teachings. And so I'm really happy to have you here. I even feel like my demeanor is a bit different now because people are calling
Lovely.
me elder, all these words that, words that we reserve for special people. And now I will stop over talking because I want you to introduce yourself. I
Sure.
want you to introduce yourself in your tell us who you are. Tell us your background because many times you're giving, you're giving, you're giving. Today I want you to first relax and tell us who you are. Tell us what you are looking for yourself in this world. I know we have a topic today, obviously, but before we start with discussing, repositories of restoration, rebuilding relationships, we need to know who is helping us reconnect and realign the way we are supposed to. We want to know who you are. So, karibu sana.
Uh, Thank you so much, Dumela. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you to the viewers that will still watch this, the people who listen to this. I think it's important to welcome all of you into the space. We, as the two of us, are holding space for all of you to be able to engage in the content, and we pray that it will be good for you. I am a voice and a teacher, as it were. I've always been someone who is geared at teaching, even within the spaces of church that I used to operate in. I am somebody who's very human. I am a man, whatever that means to everybody, with his own flaws, but with his own achievements that he's very proud of. I'm deeply rooted in my African identity and indigenous sort of, if you will, knowledge and spirituality system. I hold it very close to my heart because it's a physical part of my identity. I am a father, I'm a husband, I'm a professional, and I work. But more than anything, I am a vessel, as it were, for these elders who want to express certain things about, let's call it, old ways of being. I won't call them new, but rather old ways of being. And it's important for me to be able to be authentic to that, struggle where I need to struggle with it, and make sure that everything makes sense in the way that it needs to make sense. So I'm a being that I think is being given an opportunity right now for whatever the season is, to heal this father wound that people have, whether it is men or women, daughters or sons, that experience me in different ways. And so my purpose is twofold on this earth, and our family's purpose is twofold, is to heal and to educate, or to heal and to teach. And that's what I'm doing through this TikTok platform that has grown immensely. And I'm very, very happy that we are able to have this conversation, primarily because you've attended, these spaces, and you've felt the energy in there. I'm so grateful. And I think, let me also speak on behalf of these elders to say we are so grateful that we're able to touch Kenya, that we're able to touch where you are, and everyone that will be watching to potentially engage in this, particularly as a spiritual experience. I think that that's something that we can ask for, whatever the spirituality means to people. The second thing is, I think, and lastly, I am here to provoke thought around certain topics. Manhood, womanhood, the concept of family, the concept of relationships, our relationship with money, our relationship with ourselves. What does success look like there? What does health look like there? So all of those things are very important. And we've got to establish definitions first, for me, that make sense to us as Africans. And then from there, we'll be able to get to a place where our sense of self will be informed by those foundational definitions, and we'll be able to build. Because a lot of us are asking when Africa will build. A lot of us are asking when Africa will get to the spot where things are turning and things are great, and it is our season, it is our time. But definitions matter. We need to define what success looks like for us. We need to define what family looks like for us. We need to define what economic success looks like for us. I was saying on a live yesterday or the day before that our definition for wealth, for instance, here in the south of Africa, particularly in my tribe, the word for it is Luvuo. And Luvuo in the Setswana means wealth, but it comes from the perspective of a herd, from the root word Urua, as in to keep and to herd animals. And so from that definition, you can already tell that wealth is not a singular thing. It is something that is communal, is collective. And so wealth for the African is a collective thing, a collective endeavor. And so how do we bring people along so that we can have the rule, so we can have wealth? And so it's important that we also recognize that we don't necessarily want to differentiate between economy, wealth, riches. We don't have those differentiators, as it were. It's all the rule. It's the same word, right? And I think for me, that's important. And I don't know why I went to wealth and money first, but in any case, I think it's important for us to set those definitions in place. And what a pleasure and an honor for us to be here. I will refer to myself in the collective because I don't come alone. So it is a pleasure for us to be here and to join all of you who are present in the room with you and online.
Asante sana. That was. I think I would need probably an hour just to understand you. You're still very mysterious to me, but not mysterious in a strange way. There's something also very familiar about you. By mysterious, I mean that there's more to you. There's more that we don't know, but there's still this familiarity that you speak of that makes very many of us, countless of us, very comfortable with you. And I now you mentioned wealth, and we have to understand that we live in a world where we have professions. We have to go out there and look for money. This is affecting. We know the economic downturn right now, and we know that it's not just about relationships in the home. We cannot separate how, for example, we make money, how it affects the way we relate with one another. And because it's going to be one of the topics we talk about. And I think we can already go into that. So about purpose-driven being. So emotional intelligence and healthy expression of manhood and womanhood. And again, we can tie this again to wealth, because if we are trying, you said you're never alone. We are here as we are here. There's many of us. So our ancestors are still with us, and I really respect that you always include the ancestors. I really, really love that. So I want us to understand, where is this drift coming from, where there's a lot of violence in the home, there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of people are, it's not the way I think it used to be back when our great grandfathers were here. And I'm not saying that they had a perfect system back then. I'm just saying that there seems to be a breakdown in communication. There's this us versus them and all this, and I'm trying to understand. So going back to emotional intelligence and healthy expression, how do we bring this, the men and women together? How do we bring families together? How do we bring us together and be able to communicate in ways that are beneficial to all of us?
I think that purpose is definitely at the center. And it's at the center in ways that may sometimes be uncomfortable. We've got to be able to understand what it looks like for us to be fully behind a purpose that causes us discomfort as a space of growth, where we're not just uncomfortable for the sake of it. I think too many of us have prioritized preference. And so once we've prioritized preference, then of course, as a man, my preferences are going to be more important than the purpose that we're looking for. As a woman, your preferences are going to be more important than the purpose. And when preference is more important, it builds sort of that leeway for the schism to come through. But when you and I are sold out to the same purpose, it's a lot harder for anyone to come in and say, oh, we don't like that. We don't like the fact that Mary and Gata are together and that they're able to achieve something. It's harder because as soon as you attack Mary, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, but we are part of the same purpose. The second thing is, I think that and I did say this yesterday, and it sounds very counterintuitive for a person that speaks a lot about divine femininity and masculinity. Gender, race, and class are very temporal things and very much at the bottom of the spiritual ladder, if you want to say. And at some point in our ascension and our spiritual conversations, and even at a practical level, we need to move beyond those titles into a space where we can deal with each other as humans, and our humanity can come through. Further yet from there, we get into the soulish sort of realm. Further yet from there, we get into the spiritual, and then the godlike or godly status, that's it. But what is important about treating each other as human beings is that we then can say, what are you best placed to do as a human that you are within the context of this whole. Then we can ask you, is it important that you lead simply because your genitalia leads to that of a man? Or is it important that we look for the best leader in the home to lead in this particular aspect? The second thing is, I think we must also be clear that we're not going to lead on everything. So you might lead on the finances, you might lead on education, I might lead on spirituality, and then lead on sort of the homemaking. The role of the leader is not a hierarchical structure, it's functional. And because it's functional, I can't say that my leadership is more important than yours. Because then we get into the conversation of, I don't own you. There are a particular set of skills and spiritual gifts that you have that I desperately need in my family. And so because I desperately need them, I will appeal to your family to give me access to them. And you have also agreed to the skills and gifts that I have. And so you are going to then partake in them. If we're here for preference, what I've just said doesn't have any space, because I'm here with you because I prefer you and I like the way that you make me feel. Sometimes the relationships are going to be with people that don't necessarily make us feel good, but are actually good. And as a purpose-driven nation, purpose-driven people, we may need to come to the place where it's not about how we feel, but about what things actually achieve. And us being together, men and women being together, will achieve far more than us being separated from each other. You know, and that I think is a critical definition that we need to outline right at the beginning.
Right. Wow. I love that. And you see, I mentioned that you always include everyone. And I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to you talk about roles. Like, this is your purpose. This is your purpose. We can have a unified purpose. We do not have to have a
Yeah.
separation. And
Yes.
once you are placing this purpose before your own individual needs, because sometimes that might be a problem, then we have a mission and we're able to achieve it together. And
Yes.
now, there's this other question that I have. So, we understand these are your strengths. These are my strengths. These are your weaknesses. Those are your weaknesses. I think we have to give ourselves some credit. I don't think we are at a stage where we don't completely understand how to communicate. I do think that we understand how to communicate, and we have learned how to apologize. We've learned that, what, you cannot do this alone. You cannot build alone. You need someone else. So you need to sometimes come back and say, I'm sorry. And you need to come back and say, you know what, maybe I overreacted, or maybe I overlooked this and that. But I think now the problem is, we understand that we are not perfect. But where do we get the assistance? Where do we get the guidance as a pair? And be able to move from the point of, okay, we understand we are both human, we both understand you have your career needs, I have my career needs, you want to do this, you want to do this, I don't want children, no, I want maybe to, where do we go from this? Where do we get the support? Because I think I mentioned this in the beginning when I talked about, growing up in the church as a child. There's a lot of trauma with it, because you're a child, you're not prepared for this environment. Even when you're going to the hospital, before they draw out your blood to test it, there's a preparation process. When you go to, if anyone has had surgery, I've had surgery for my wrist. Before anything happens, you meet the surgeon, you know their name, you know their specialty, you understand, they walk you through it, the nurses as well. But the way we met or came into contact with spirituality and religion, I know there's a separation, there's sometimes you can distinguish between the two, but the way we came to understand and to learn spirituality was not in a way that prepared us. And the problem is that, because this is the only setting in the church, for example, where we know, or any other kind of religious, I want to include everyone. Some people go to churches, some people go to mosques, some go to the padre, some go to the imam. But because these are the only settings, many of us have been taught to go seek help especially women. A lot of women, like in Kenya, they go a lot to the church, to the pastors. But some of us are now getting to a point where we want to evolve. And when I talk about evolution, is that um, when I talk about evolving, is that I'm talking about, you have your own profession. There are certain things you want to discuss with the person within this space or who understands this industry. So it cannot be generic advice. And now I'm coming back to my point. As a couple, we understand each other. We are human. We have these issues. You have these issues. I have this issue. Where are we supposed to be getting the help that we need? The psychologists, the speeches. Where do we go from here?
I think it begins as individuals as well. And what is wonderful is that our ways of being in education often also teach us that you will have multiple teachers at a time. And we've got to be very careful not to make everyone everything or one person everything. So it's okay for us to potentially go to, I don't know, family X to speak around marital things because we trust in their leadership in that respect, or we trust in their wisdom, at least in that respect. But we're not going to go to the same family when we want to speak about financial things. And we're not going to go to the same family when we want to speak about spiritual things. And so I think it's important for us to be able to identify the different reservoirs or wells of wisdom that are important, because it will always take a village. And the child will always need the village to grow. Even if the child is 60 years old and they need a village, the village will still be there. And the 60-year-old must not be afraid to ask the 30-year-old for it. Because we're living in a space where it is clear that people understand that our view of life is also informed by the way that we relate to other people. So that being the case, I think we've got to then have a sort of, if you will, council of advisors, old and young, that are able to then give us the advice. And let's also be okay with disagreement. We don't have to agree with all of the advice that we get, but we trust the voice. Because even within the midst of that disagreement, there may be some things that we're going to look at and say, oh, okay, we don't agree fully, but we will take one or two. And I think that that's also important as individuals. And we don't often really take the time. And it's something that I think has been really put into my heart of late, because there are some executives in the workplace that I'm at that are in this moment speaking about, oh, but I was speaking to my mentor. I was speaking to my mentor. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I've tried that before. Maybe I need to go back again. Maybe that's a hint, right? Maybe, to say, hey, you need to go back and seek that kind of mentorship or that kind of working together. And I do think that we must get to that place, even as entities, as couples, as organizations, where we can go to different people. The problem is we've become way too individualized. So we think we know it all, and we think we're at the top and no one can tell us anything. And well, when people do start telling us stuff, we don't want to listen.
Unfortunately, yes. And I want to hear from you, from your own observations, back home, because you're still on the continent. I'm a bit far, so I cannot use the experiences that I see here to, to describe what is going on back home. But what trend are you seeing? Because I've been seeing a lot of people openly talking about therapy, talking about psychologists, talking to them. Because before, like I mentioned, it was always about the pastor. That's it. You talk to the pastor, you speak to the nun, you speak to someone in a religious institution. And I'm seeing a lot of changes. Of course, I live in Finland, so Europe is, but I want to know what you're observing, because I'm seeing that, but I'm still seeing that men tend to struggle more with, one, saying they need help, also disclosing that they're getting help. So we have that challenge. Women seem to be more open to this? What do you think? And why do we have this
Spot
difference?
on. Spot on. Also, it's because we've removed softness from manhood. We've decided that it's important for the man to be very hard, to be very tough. And also, we've equated having a problem with it being an emotional experience only. Sometimes you need to go to the therapist to declutter your mind, but nothing to do with your emotions. It's just a lot of things that are going on in your mind that you desperately need to fix in terms of ordering them, speaking about them, or whatever the case. But I think it is a problem for a lot of men, and it's actually quite interesting, regardless of race at that point, particularly because of, I think, the unhealthy masculinity that is being taught. The stoic, don't cry, don't show any weakness, tell everybody you're fine, collapse internally. And we're dealing with the consequences thereof. I mean, I wonder if potentially we look at some of the leaders that are in place in some of the governments across the continent or anywhere else, and you wonder whether these people have engaged in just a little bit of therapy. What would happen then, you know? And I'm not purporting to say they are people who desperately need it. They would know. But I know, at least within our country, that potentially it would have been a very interesting experience for some of our leaders to receive some counseling and therapy post-apartheid and then get into government. I think we quickly went from trauma to government. And a lot of men are quickly going from trauma to marriage, trauma to relationship, trauma to all sorts of other things, or from trauma to trauma. And that becomes, sort of the thing. Number two, and it's something that we don't realize, a lot of people, Mary, enjoy suffering. And it's a weird thing. People will often choose sometimes to suffer, as opposed to choosing things that are a little bit more easier, more softer, a little bit more great for them. And initially, when you say that, people are like, there's no way that people will choose suffering. And then you get into the example to say, okay, but pain is not optional. A lot of people experience pain. But now let's get into the examples. You are experiencing the pain of retrenchment beyond your control. Why do you choose the suffering of alcoholism? So we agree with you, there's pain, but why did you choose the suffering of drugs? Why are you choosing the suffering of a very promiscuous life? Why? There is a suffering that you're choosing there, and you're choosing that suffering, saying that you're trying to cope with something. I think there are some people who choose relationships that are completely outside of what they should be, completely, and not in the space of this person is out of your league. No, they're just bad for you. But yet you go with your eyes wide open, marching through. And we were at the place where, particularly for men and for women, we've got to know what's actually good for us and choose it, and then stick to the choice. And unfortunately, we're not choosing the things that are good for us firstly. And then when good things actually come about, we are unable to follow through with the choices because goodness in and of itself comes with some discomfort. So we've been sold a little bit of a lie that good is going to be easy all the time. No. It won't be. And so we are unable to choose to prioritize ourselves because it's much easier to live with nonsensical sayings like happy wife, happy life, because it's easier to then fit into the mold as opposed to choosing better and saying, I'm not going to suffer for the happiness of my wife. My happiness is also important as a man. And so I'm going to deal with the things that make me unhappy. I don't, and we often speak about this sort of scourge or issue of fatherlessness, and it's a critical thing that's happening across a continent. But we also need to understand that there are many other men that are around in the lives of all of these children. And we need to choose them. We need to choose to open ourselves up to fathers who are not necessarily our biological fathers. And so we are choosing the pain of holding on to what left and ignoring what is available. And so we then can go down this rabbit trail of what exactly we're choosing over and over again, and we will realize that goodness sometimes seems to be a foreign thing. People sometimes choose to suffer in jobs. They choose to suffer in silence. They get conditioned and allow themselves not to unlearn the conditioning. Choose the spaces after really systemic conditioning of abuse, and they say yes to those things. And we must confess that some of the situations that we face in life are of our own making, and we are unable to then say how we got here, how we want to get out.
I thank you so much. And you mentioned choosing to suffer, and I want us to specifically talk about how we numb the pain. And it's not just, I don't think it's just men, but usually it's mostly men who use, for example, alcohol. I'm from Kenya. I know that not just men, but more men tend to use alcohol to numb the pain and all that. And I want us to go to a part, because you mentioned about South Africa having the not going through the process of dealing with the trauma, post apartheid and everything. And now it takes me back to also the Kikuyu community because of the Mau Mau. So we know what happened to our community. They almost decimated our communities. And I was listening to this content creator the other day. I believe she's also an author. She's also from the Kikuyu community. And she mentioned about how how her mother gave birth to her and where the father was. And she talked about this really traumatic experience with alcoholism. And she talked about how it's not something that just started. So it's also something that has been passed down, because we know that during the colonial era, it was sometimes used in a way, they throw things at you to make you addicted to them. Or, there's different ways people came into substance abuse. But then it's now being passed down from one generation to another, and we don't talk about it. We don't. So I think so. There's that part where there are younger people who are choosing substances, but then we also have this passing down, this escape, this form of escaping pain and problems. And I'm just wondering, how are we going to get to a point where we are able to heal? And I don't want to repeat myself, because like I mentioned, there's so many people, and you said, what, you cannot get everything from one person. You're not going to get everything from your pastor. You're not going to get everything from your psychologist or whatever. And remember, I need to remind everyone, because people get a bit worked up when they see people mentioning words like therapy. This is an African-centered series, and we make no apologies for that. So we are talking about culture, we are talking about ancestors, and we're talking about how we deal with our own special issues. So how do we get to that? And number two, you mentioned that race and gender and all that they're not as high at the top. But then we also have to remember, because we talked about wealth in the beginning, how we cannot separate this. But then do you see, or do you not see that, for example, African or Black men are carrying a lot of they have a huge burden on them? And not just because of what we are carrying from colonialism, but because now they have to be providing for their families the same as other men, but then they're the ones who are working under all these other men. It's the same thing in Kenya and in South Africa. You're working under not just one race of men, but different of them. And it's been going on for ages. So can we really say that the Black man is going through the same things, or do they need the same solutions with other men?
No. I think that, so if we were to think about it in the family terms, we're part of the human family. And as the Black person of the family, there are certain things that we have gone through that other family members have inflicted upon us that are atrocious. And so we've got to go and deal with that. But the other person has also got to go and deal with the fact that they inflicted those things. So I speak about redress in the following way, to say that if we think about a family that has been sitting at a table and everyone has had 3 pieces of chicken for many years, and suddenly I come into the room. Firstly, people have got to move to make space at the table. Or if there is a seat available, I've got to pull the chair and sit down. Now I have a plate in front of me and it's empty. And people are used to having 3 pieces of chicken. It means, of necessity, one of 2 things need to happen. Everyone in there needs to now go and slaughter 3 more chickens or another chicken to be able to give me 3 pieces of chicken. So you are increasing. Or you've got to then ask a couple of people to say, can you give me 1 piece each, so that I can also have 2 pieces and you will have 2 pieces and the other person will have 2 pieces and the others will have 3. People are afraid of redress because they feel like, I'm going to get into the room, take their plate and say, you don't deserve a plate because you've been eating. No. I'm saying I deserve to eat. I recognize that you're human, but I also deserve to eat. And the Black man deserves to eat, in as much as the white man deserves to eat, in as much as the Indian man deserves to eat, or the Asian man deserves to eat, in every single way. But it is the Black man that must also understand that the things that we have gone through are very important as a context and really as a way for us to understand where we are right now. We are also then responsible for the dismantling of those systems to enable us to get better and better and better. But when we stick to the system being against us and we fall into the paralysis of analysis and problematizing everything, we are not able to move. We're not able to. The second thing I think, which is quite critical, is as people, there must be something that grounds us. You see, the colonizer was grounded by the effect of expansion and increasing with the empire. What is the singular thing that grounds Black people across the world? What is that? Do we even agree on that thing? Let's not go across the world. What is the singular thing that grounds Kenyan Black people? Is there such a? Are we able to say, no, we agree as Black people on this? I can tell you for free that the Afrikaner in South Africa agrees on fundamental principles. The fact that they were able to build the Broederbond, to build apartheid South Africa, to build commercialization from that, to put Afrikaner people in specific roles with a clear direction that we are going to be in charge of this country in this way. It is a clear vision of what exactly they want to achieve. And we are not unable to get there. We have all sorts of organizations, even today in a democratic South Africa, that still speak to the need, the cultural nuance, the cultural preservation of Ghana. But we are also then able to get to the cultural nuance, the cultural preservation of the Black person. And now we come then to the place where we have convinced ourselves that these tribal identities are so important that we cannot now work together. I'm going to look after the Tswana. You're going to look after the Kikuyu people. You're going to look after this people. Only want to speak to people that speak Swahili. I only want to speak to people that speak Yoruba. We are getting concerned with things that are temporal. Language is temporal. Culture is temporal. Yes, it is important, but there is a humanity there that we need to get to. And within the course of our Blackness, let us first see one another as humans. Let us see one another as understanding that you are going through the same thing that I am going through. Let us then understand what it looks like to lift up one another. But also, finally, let us not profess that suffering is our birthright when it is not. Poverty is not the unique position of the Black person. It is just the face, and it can change, and we should want it to change. We should not be happy also with definitions for poverty that seem to want to paint our systems in ways that are blanket. I have asked the question before whether somebody who has land to farm crops, has got enough land to have, whether it's poultry or cattle, has got a roof over their head and access to water. Does it matter that that person is unemployed? Do we still even count that person as poor? Is it critical for us to perhaps change our definitions? Because if I've got access to food, I've got access to shelter, I've got access to water, what else are we working for, guys? Because we are then working for food, shelter, experiences. That's it. And if I've got those, then I might in fact be more wealthier than Mr. Dangote or Mr. Motsepe. And we must then get to the place of understanding why it is that we are constantly painted as the poor country, as the poor people. Maybe we are the rich, and we're the rich people, and quantify that. Because if we radically today sort of redesigned our definitions for wealth and poverty to be more Afrocentric, then Europe suddenly starts looking at home. North America starts looking. And what does that do then to the psyche of people who've told themselves that they're wealthy and told themselves that they're rich? And we've told ourselves that we're poor. We've told ourselves that we're lacking. We're the monument of pain. No. And if we're not, suddenly we become people who ought to be listened to. And then we can maybe get into the discussion around knowledge. And then we can get into a discussion around currency. We can get into discussion around trade. But in order for us to get there, there's a mind something that needs to happen or a shift there. And some of that shifting is located within spirituality. And that's where I really wanted to localize it, is that our space has been sapped of authentic, sort of, if you will, spiritual practice. I don't want to say there was an African spirituality, because I don't think there's an African anything. In general, we are all different ways of doing things. And we must appreciate that diversity. So we need to go back to what it looks like to be spiritually grounded, and grounded in public, not in private. In the same way that in Asian cultures, they're grounded in public. Native American tribes are grounded in public. East Asian tribes are grounded in public. It is only the African that is grounded in private.
Why? Do you think it has anything to do with shame? Because I was just listening to another conversation today, and people were saying, you're proud to mention this person's ancestor. You're proud to mention the work of this person. I listen to a lot of Africans, especially. I live in Finland. They live in Africa, but they will quote authors from all over the place, as far as possible from Africa. And sometimes, because I'm a bit, ahead with the decolonization, because I've had to living in this space. And I'm listening, I'm like, you didn't mention a single author or leader from Africa. Do you live in Africa? So is it a shame thing? Do you think that, because now this is my opinion, I think the reason we are where we are is that it's like coming to a meeting and prepared. So you have two other people coming to the meeting. They're already prepared. They've been prepared for centuries. And you're coming into the meeting. It doesn't mean that you come with nothing, but you intentionally didn't bring anything to it. You decided to come unprepared. So how do we reconcile this? How do we prepare?
I think we've got to prepare also from the perspective of understanding exactly who we are and what we bring to the meeting. I think we're uncertain of that. I think we're uncertain of what it looks like for us to flourish. Do we know what a healthy and successful African continent looks like? And if we do, are we clear on how we want to get there? Because I don't think so. I think there are various interests, and some of these are counter to the success of this continent. And some of them are self-seeking, masked as good for the continent, or so if you get to a space where you're speaking around decolonization, for instance, I've often asked the question, or in fact even seen other thinkers, creators ask the question. We often speak about Western coloniality and what effect it had. But we don't speak about Eastern coloniality and the effect that it had. Um, we've our process of decolonizing spaces, families, wealth, economies is one that has got to also allow for certain laws to be observed. So nature doesn't like the vacuum. And when we dismantle the one system, we must put the other in place. And that's where the African is failing. We are unable to then, so we know this one is bad. What are we replacing it with? And I'm not necessarily dogging the ideologies that have helped us to get to where we are. It's wonderful that they're there. My concern is, when does ideology move into practice? And also the ideologues who are then in charge, when does it move to accountability towards the mass, not the individual? And furthermore, because we've removed the spirituality from the politics, from the economy, from everything, or even the culture, I can't even now hold you accountable and say that your corruption means that at a spiritual level you are creating debt for your family and you are going to pay. That because you are stealing from people, your family will be made to pay as a spiritual law. I can't say that to you because I've secularized the space. So in an attempt to be as inclusive as possible, shot ourselves in the foot because people are thinking about problems that have not yet even emerged. So if we are able to say that your ancestors must be so disgusted at the level of corruption that you are purporting over your people, that phrase is completely different to we are going to wield the long arm of the law in order to use the justice system to. It's a completely different system. And even if you don't necessarily observe, revere, or believe or speak to your ancestors, there'll be some in your family who are going to hear that insult, hear that curse, if you will, and say, Shaka. See, there must be a deterrent to doing things that are wrong, but there must also be a reward to doing things that are right. And we're missing the reward. And I think that's the problem. Men are also missing the reward piece for the therapy. Getting back to that question, families are missing the reward piece for being good people. We're missing the reward piece for being people that uphold the law, as it were, because we consistently see the minority of evil that is constantly blasted in our faces. You would be forgiven for thinking that every man cheats, as an example. There are genuinely men who are completely monogamous and don't want any other woman except the woman that they're with. There are genuinely women that are like that as well. And you might not even find that they are a minority. Perhaps they are a majority. There are genuinely functional homes. There are people that come from homes that are two-parent homes that are great, that are wonderful. And then there are people that come from one-parent homes. But because we want to speak about the statistics and the lived reality of the pain that we're in, we ignore the statistics and the pleasure and the goodness of the greatness that we come from as well. And so there is a thing here where we want to decolonize and we want to be sort of or remove and decenter Western notions from ourselves, we must then also begin to ask the question, what does African luxury look like? What does African, if you will, as even if it's a Wakanda, in inverted commas, right? How do we make that a reality? And is that the reality that we want for the continent? Because how do we build in a decolonized way? How do we love in a decolonized way? How do we, and we think that that is a misnomer, but even our way that we love is colonized or is Western leaning. Because there are all these commercial imperatives, the commodification of love that's there. But in the same breath, we replace it with, what does African love look like, Mary? And do we know? And are we willing to get to a space where our conceptions of things fundamentally change? And this is why I started by saying definitions are so important. Because if we're not clear on the definition, we're speaking past each other. Because there are other people who are clear on their definitions. They're clear that, love means purchasing roses on Valentine's Day. They're clear that there's an engagement ring. They're clear that this white robe symbolizes something. That's a cultural, statement. We are also clear that marriage is never between two people, it's between families. But how do we replace this Western system with an African system? How do we get married without a pastor present and think it's okay? What does that look like for people who are then struggling with the decolonization, even of love? I want to just move into the home because I've got charge. So I'm going to go off the video, but I'll still be able to hear you and I'll contribute.
Okay. I will prepare the next set of questions for you. So you mentioned decolonization and also being westernized and how it affects how we view love and relationships and everything. And I've noticed that there's quite a lot of people, and again, I'm going to say especially men, these are people I've seen talk about it publicly. They have a problem with us always going back to colonialism and decolonizing. They don't really like this term. They don't like the term decolonization because they think that we are focusing too much on the wound. But then again, I see the same kind of men. Usually they've lived in the West or they live in the West. They will be the same ones who will be in situations where they say, well, I don't want to be in this kind of relationship. It's too westernized. Or I do not relate with women like this because this is such a Western way of relating with them. So it's like, okay, we don't want to talk about decolonizing. We don't want to talk about how we are influenced by colonialism in our own relationships, but then we want to talk about westernization. So I want you to just just include this group of people and just tell us how do we work without mentioning the problem, because the problem is that we are colonized. When you mention things like Valentine's Day, meaning that you need to get to buy me a bouquet of roses, you need to take me to a 5-star hotel for 2 nights to prove your love to me, you have to do all those things. I think you and I know that's not proof of love. Love is something more, less materialistic. And you mentioned weddings as well. We have seen this trend with African marriages where the ceremonies normally have, for example, in Kenya, there's going to be, or even Nigeria, there's going to be a church wedding. Then there's a separate budget where there's also going to be the traditional wedding. There's going to be clothes for this, clothes for that. And that is westernized. So now I want us to focus on that. Can we solve the problem without calling the problem what it is, which is colonialism? Can we also find our own way of defining love and happy and healthy relationships? Because I see this now, we're using too much money. Most people cannot afford it. Like I know, for example, in Kenya, we have this Harambe spirit. If you don't have money for something, you simply call to everyone, You give me something, you give me something. And now a lot of people are saying, especially the young people, no, we're not going to give people money to do their weddings anymore. If you cannot afford your wedding, then you need to budget accordingly. So there's all this mix up. Do you need to save up for the family you're building or for wedding? Like, I see a lot of colonialism, but people don't want to talk about the colonialism in it. What do you think?
I don't think people are going to talk about the colonialism. I hope that you can hear me still well. But I think people are not going to talk about that, particularly because it's uncomfortable, Mary. It's incredibly uncomfortable and it's hard. You're asking people to abandon what gave them a sense of worth for so many years. Let alone the fact that we already had that sense of worth and it was taken away from us and all of these things. But you're asking people to prioritize their culture over the Western economy. Oof, don't touch our Western spaces. Don't you dare. That it's the best thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world. And you know, it's important for us to always say this because people get touched. Whiteness is deeply, deeply demonic, deeply devilish, deeply weird, deeply, deeply like from the base pit of hell. But white people, amazing, fantastic, just wonderful, wonderful. But the system of oppression, heinous, a crime against humanity, just it's bad. We must acknowledge that. So why are we thinking that something so, oh, the English has failed me now, but there's a word for it.
It's so obvious and so old and so in your face, it's there.
And we think that that is going to help us love better. That is going to help us be men better. That's going to help us be women better. No, it won't. It won't. And even in the session that we had last night on divine femininity, and there was a time where, you know, these elders or ancestors asked me to call particular women up to speak on the different elements and how they relate to femininity. The one thing that is very clear about us, Mary, is that our women were not and have never been damsels in distress. African women have never been damsels in distress. And our women are strong and soft. Whereas there's this Western view of things, of ultimate softness, ultimate sensuality is the zenith of femininity. No. Our women were leading battalions into war. Our women were sitting and leading. In fact, what we call culture today sometimes is bastardized by coloniality and then fed back to us as patriarchy and culture. That's nonsense. Patriarchy is completely un-African, if you want to go there. Our relationships were spaces that allow for people to be the best versions of themselves. And thus, we then knew that this person is allowed to be the best version of themselves. And because they're allowed to do that, they also give of the best version and the best gifts and the best time and the best whatever. We are not seeing that today. Somebody told men that relationships are all about you. And we believed that lie. We believed the lie that marriage is all about us. I asked the question to a few younger people, 14 or so years old, and I asked, so if your partner or your wife wants to go overseas and you are in country, what's going to happen? And it's boys. And generally they will say, no. Why is she going and leaving me behind? And then you ask the question in the reverse. Okay, you get the opportunity. Yeah, no, I'm going. Okay. What's so different between you and her? And then you get into the question of saying, no, but if this person is earning more than you, earning double, and they're able to make sure that all of you can move over, will you move? And there's this initial hesitation? It's because of things that we're teaching these young people. We're teaching boys that, no, but your girlfriend can't earn more than you. Where did you hear that? We're teaching girls that, oh, but you must just take care of everything. You must just give them your body. Nonsense. Just utter nonsense. And, this notion of stay at home, what? In my view, is also a very interesting Western concept. Because for me, I don't, I think the person saying there's an audio issue, but at least we can hear each other, I think.
I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. We hope it's just a singular sort of issue. But in any respect, the home is a space for work and a space for relaxation and a space for wealth creation. And so when people were working in the home, we didn't call it stay at home anything. When you were looking after the flock, when you were tending to the crops and selling them, that's work in the home. So why are we now is suddenly a stay-at-home? What? Man, somebody's lying to us, and we must confess that we are no longer believing these lies. In tandem with that, I think it's wonderful that we're getting to the place where our weddings can be smaller, and our weddings can be events with people that actually like us, where we don't have to pretend to anybody, where we don't have to somehow make anyone happy at our death. No. When I got married 2023, I was very clear, and it was very hectic for a lot of people because, I used to be a pastor and all of that. And I said, I'm not going to have any pastor speaking because I want the blessings of family members, because they, to me, mean a lot more than the blessing of any pastor. And it was very clear that that's the direction we're going to go on my side of the family. On my wife's side, if they wanted, that's fine. They could have that, and that's okay. But in the end, we ended up just having family members speaking. And what a beautiful thing it is to just have family members speaking. Because they know you, and they know the real you, not the pretentious one where you are lifting arms in the one place and you are beating in that. So it's important that we really recognize that our sort of marriages are actually being saved from the infiltration of this Western system. We then have got to also deal with the patriarchy that's in there, where men feel entitled to women's bodies in some weird way. And those are things that we really need to engage on because it's completely un-African.
Thank you for mentioning this and also bringing your own real life into this. And now I want you to continue by explaining to us when I hear the word submission, I'm not married. I don't know whether that's unfortunate or not. I would have wanted to be married.
It's fine.
Okay. But I don't know. When I hear the term submission, I get very uneasy. And I think it's because it comes again. This is a word that is used a lot. It's hammered. We are slapped with this word all the time. And I want to understand, what is submission to you? Should we submit? What is that? And then after that, I want you to go into polygamy. I've covered this topic before with 2 Igbo women. I think that was episode 4. But now I'm talking to you, a man, and I want you to cover those 2 words, those 2 concepts, submission and polygamy.
Talk about North Pole and South Pole, but that's fine. So let me just deal with this submission thing first. I am a big believer in mutual submission. Huge believer in mutual submission because, like I said earlier, I'm not going to lead everywhere or on everything. So men have also got to submit. I don't think there's anything wrong with men submitting to their women on particular things. Absolutely nothing wrong. And I say it so simply to communicate a particular point as well, to say that it's normal for men to submit. So that's really what I have on the notion of submit. I don't want to watch lyrical on it. No, we must normalize mutual submission. And we must normalize it also from the perspective of us understanding that the best person for the job must do the job. And in some respects, it's okay for you to be in relationship with somebody and as a man to let them lead the relationship. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make you less of a human being. Because if you're not a great leader, why do we assume that in your relationship you're going to be a great leader? You have failed at leadership elsewhere. We have a clear example of you not being a great leader everywhere else, but suddenly in your relationship you're supposed to lead. Where do we get that? Guys, you are unable to lead a group of 3. Just a group of 3 to get to a particular sort of space or location. And I know I'm being facetious about it, but it's the truth. Where we must also ask you to prove that you know how to lead. Give us examples in your life where you have led. Come into the relationship as an interview. Just give us 2-3 places where you have led people and achieved particular goals. Then maybe you'll be able to get the sense of understanding that, no, but this thing is not for you. And it's okay. You know, and if the woman that you're with has also never led that, blind are leading the blind. And you'll figure it out. Where in the way you're going to figure it out. And I just think that mutual submission is important because you're going to see things that I don't see. You're going to be good at things that I'm not good at, right? And so, yeah, it's quite important. On the polygamy front, it's a system of what I call covenant relationship, where it can occur in different ways. And we can speak about polyandry within the African context, where you have one female to multiple males. We can speak about polygyny, where you have one male to multiple females. I don't see polyamory a lot within the African context. We have multiple partners upon multiple partners, and I'm open to being educated on that. But the first 2, I definitely see a lot of examples. Whether you're speaking about the Rain Queen, for instance, here in South Africa, or other queens across the continent that had multiple partners, sometimes even of different genders. There's something to throw in. You know, so the notion of the plurality of relationships is not new. But also it's not as ubiquitous as we'd think it was in olden times. And I think that polygamy must have purpose. That's very critical. In fact, every marriage arrangement or covenantal relationship must have purpose. We must answer the question, why are we together? And in answering the question, why are we together, then we can answer the question, why do we want to have children? What are these children going to do? What are the things that we're pursuing, and how are we pursuing them, and why are we pursuing? And so when polygamy is brought into the fray, we also then need to understand, and I'll only speak from the polygyny perspective as someone that practices, this practice has become very much something that is bastardized, and it is sad to watch, particularly from the perspective that relationships are all going the same way, where you need a whole lot of money to be able to be in relationships. Now, why do I bring that in? I'm a person that does not even believe that men are providers. So I've railed against that for a very long time. I don't think we're providers at all. I don't even think women are only nurturers. I think both of us can provide. I think both of us can nurture. I think it's important that we have shared responsibility within the relationship context. But I do believe that we are managers of what is provided to us. And of course, that gets into a question of who is providing it. Then we get into the elders, we get into a spiritual arrangement around things that you are given. So within the context of covenant relationships, we bring our best selves. So you bring your finances, I bring mine. You bring your talents, I bring mine. You bring your mind, I bring mine. And that is the case as well, I believe, in ancient polygamies. I think we're just not hearing the stories, but there may have been some homes that were built by the woman and not by the man. And the woman wanted particular things that the man had, whether it was the wisdom, whether it was the spiritual gifting, whether it was the covering. And they noticed that, and I think that this is where potentially the biblical document takes it from a revelation perspective to say, in that sort of last day, you will have women that say, we just want your name. We've got everything sorted. I think that points to a deeper reality of certain societies where, let me just say this, where women didn't need marriage, but they wanted it. They desired it. And because they desired it, they were able to then choose the best partner for their particular desires or their family desires that are there. And even within the context of polygamy, it's got to benefit the families that are involved. The first thing is purpose. The second is benefit. And I think benefit is not just financial, although a lot of people believe that polygamy is a wealthy man's game. Again, I think that's a colonial bastardization of it. And the only reason why I say that is purpose is so much bigger than money. Money is a tool that we can use to live, and it's wonderful for us to be able to live, and it's wonderful for us to be responsible in our life. But we cannot prevent people from having purpose relationships simply because they don't have money. And we can't also prevent people from living in situations that we would think are poverty-ridden simply because we believe that there's a particular standard for things. Again, and it goes back to our definitions. Who taught us that the mud hut is primitive? Who taught us that the rondavel that is built with thatch is primitive? And we should be aiming for 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses that have got this and this and this, right? I do not dispute that it's okay for us to have these homes. And it's a good thing for us to want to have those homes and want to do those things. If it is that somebody comes into an arrangement, and a lot of people would have a problem with the way that I'm describing it now, but if a woman comes into an arrangement and she's a multi-millionaire, and she comes into a polygamous arrangement, she has every right to build the homes of the other woman. And the reason why that sounds so foreign and strange is because we're not used to actual partnership in relationships. We want it on paper, but in reality, we're still harkening back to olden ways of thinking, colonial ways of thinking. Who told us that the woman is unable to work or bring her fullest self financially into a relationship? Who told us that it is the man's sole responsibility to carry a vision so large without any support from the woman around him? Why are they there if they don't want to support him? And why did they agree to it in the first place if they don't want to support him? In every other area of partnership, people bring their fullest selves, except African relationships. It's the weirdest thing. We bring our fullest selves in business relationships. In business, there is no one that will get into a business relationship where I say to you, I just want you to look pretty. I will bring all the money. There's no one. If I'm bringing the money, you are bringing the expertise or the clients or the know-how. So we're all bringing our fullest selves. And if we're bringing our fullest selves in every other space, why is it failing in relationships? Because even within the context of business, there are some women who will front or not front, but put up the money and say, I'm the one that's got the money. You're the one as the man that got the. Why is that a concept so hard to imagine in the relationship context, but everywhere else it can work? When you're doing group work within the context of education, sometimes it is that there are 4 ladies and 1 guy in that context of the academic discussion. And right there, it's fine. He's allowed to produce what he produces, and everyone else is producing what they produce. Why is that so foreign within the context of relationships? So I'm trying to prove that everywhere else, Genuine partnership is valued, except in the relationship space. And somewhere we need to call it out, and we need to be able to say that must die. And so even within the polygamous context, there's nothing wrong with expecting women to pay for things. And there's nothing wrong with expecting men to pay for things. But as soon as we make it one person's responsibility to pay for everything, I don't see that anywhere else in life. It's an anomaly, and we must call it what it is. It's a colonial construct that is an anomaly, because I don't see that in African societies, frankly.
I agree. And you know what? In African society, it's, the way we explain it is, it doesn't make sense. If we are both going to work, we are both spending X amount of hours outside the home. But then we create this rule where all your money, you do whatever you want to do with it, but then all my money does everything for us. There's something about that. Listen, if you're making, way more, if I'm making 2,500 euros and you are making like 4,000 euros, I can kind of see, but still, like, and I'm now imagining being here in the West. That's still like, I've never heard that doesn't work. Like, you cannot both be going to work and then one person pays the rent, everything, and the other one pockets them. I have never ever heard that, and I know a lot of people are gonna be unhappy with me saying this, but we also have to look at how we are placing ourselves in a very bad position, because if in one instance we are saying, men have always said, you know what, I have to take care of my wife, I have to take care of the children, I have to take care of the home and everything else, so I need more money. And that means that the women working with him have to earn less. If we are saying that is wrong, how can we be the same women who are saying that, you know what, I'm working, but I expect my man to pay everything? Do you see? We are contradicting ourselves, and we are placing other women working with your husband or your boyfriend in a very bad position. So we have to decide, do we want at work to all be paid according to what we bring to the table or according to gender? Because then we cannot go at home and say, you know what, we both working, but one person doesn't do anything. If you don't have a job, fine, we don't expect you to do anything, but we cannot make rules that. And you know what, if you love, this is what I believe, and again, I have to remind everyone, I live in Finland. When we are going to work, we haven't attained, that equality that we talk about, but compared to very many countries in the world, we are so further ahead in Finland, Norway, Iceland, and other Nordic countries. That's a fact. So I think when you love someone, it wouldn't even make sense. Let's just talk about the love itself. It wouldn't make sense that you love each other. You've both gone to college, you spend a lot of time, but then you're making rules like this. So in Africa, but then again, it's different in Africa because men have a lot of power compared to here, right? So
And that's wrong.
how do we deal with this?
That's wrong. The systems of egalitarianism that the West now espouses are deeply African principles that they took from us. And we can't continue to say that our societies are just deeply patriarchal and all that. No. Again, we must, and I want to say that even if I'm making 1 million and my wife is making 10,000, I wanted to bring the 10,000. And the reason why I wanted to bring the 10,000 is because at a spiritual level, Mary, and this is something that we're not discussing, the money carries a particular energy that they're contributing. And so if you sit back and you're not contributing, you have no skin in the game. You are here, yes, but you have absolutely no skin in the game. So even if you're going to give us 1 rand every month, give that 1 rand. Particularly because at a spiritual level, you are then also telling your own elders to say, hey, I'm invested here.
Yes.
So please continue giving that 1 million. I'll give my 1 rand every week, but give him the millions as well. Because we must bring value in our homes. And this is the problems we're not doing that. The relationships are not places where people are bringing and giving value. They are places to take and take and take. And no, it's a space where you must bring your fullest self, your best self, which is constantly evolving. And the other person or persons must then bring their best and fullest selves so that we can get to a place where truly, we're clear on what it looks like for us to be thriving in this relationship. Because why in the world would we get together if we actually don't love each other? And then we must confess that people don't love each other and they don't like each other. Because why would you get into an arrangement with somebody where you're going to give certain parts of you and then the other parts you're going to withhold? Why are you withholding them? Because you don't do that with anybody else. You know, with healthy relationships with family members, where really and truly both of you are working, let's assume even both of you are millionaires. If a person comes and says, man, can you give me 150K? There's something, oh, really good.
Should be natural.
In fact, you'll give 200,000. Be like, yeah, it's fine. You know what? There was this other thing that I did, and you remember I owe you for, sharp, not a problem. But because you're in a space where you genuinely don't love and you genuinely don't want to be here, and actually you're not really sure about what you are going to have all these excuses to say, but no, actually he must provide. That's his job. He must, I don't really, no, ma'am, I'm calling you out, ma'am. You must also do the things. You must also be the person, because if we want that egalitarianism, to your point, we must then also allow you to contribute. You know, I was on a podcast with some high school boys. They're in grade 12 this year. Fantastic group of guys. And they were asking, so how do we navigate this love thing? A similar question to what you're asking. And I said, gents, my advice is simple. First date, go ahead. You can pay for it. No problem. I agree you are the one that is asking. And it can go even the other way around. If the lady is asking you out, it's fine, no problem. You can pay for the date. But after that, I want you to watch what that person does. And if that person is going to keep quiet and have absolutely no initiative and not say that they want to also take you out, they want to also see, you know that you're wasting your time. Primarily because effort is not something that's going to take 10 years to see. Effort and initiative and reciprocity are things that have got to be there from the very beginning so that we start on the right foundation. Because if I've taken you out, and you then say, oh, can we just please have this picnic? There's some things that we can get at Woolly. I'm okay. I'm not saying that we must, you know, if I've given you a date worth 10,000, you must also give me a date worth 10,000. No. I'm saying reciprocate. And I realize that even in some of these lives, when I say that, like, the women shake a bit. Because they're like, no, but what do you mean? Like, he must take me out 4 or 5 times before. No, he does not have to. From the very beginning, establish reciprocity as a fundamental principle in your relationship. And be involved. Be involved. Be clear that you also want to get to know this person. Be clear that you're also committed to this relationship. And then we begin to see African women come to the fore. Women that are going to be so amazing that some men are not even going to approach, which is exactly what we want. We want the right people to approach each other. The riffraff must stay together there, where they want to make each other feel pain, and they want to make each other, you know, and play hard to get. They must stay there, not with us. We want relationships that are of value. We want relationships that are going to make us better. Relationships that are going to absolutely propel us to being the best versions of ourselves. And we're going to ask critical questions even as we date, or even as we say, hey, this is what we want to build. I'm going to have a date with you just to discuss Manchester City and Liverpool. Although those are nice teams to speak about, but no, we want to know, what is your purpose? What is the plan that you have? And when we're unable to have those discussions, why in the world are we still having a conversation around relationship? Because it's clear that you want to play, and I'm serious.
But let me ask you a question about reciprocity, because I have personally had a problem with this, and even at my old age. But I think I get very confused sometimes. And this is, I think it's also something very cultural. And now, again, because I have 2 cultures. I'm here, but then I'm also very Kenyan.
Yeah.
And I noticed that because I've lived between the countries. I haven't just come here for 20s and remained here. But I've noticed that back home, there's this thing where a man is expected to do certain things. But then because I have this different culture, because I came here at 22, that's a very young girl. You know, I've been working and paying all my bills, doing everything for myself. So then I go back home and I'm living for this amount, like a year or something. And I decide, okay, let me date. And then you're not used to asking for anything because you're coming from a very different culture. But then because you understand in our culture, a man offers to, yeah, I'll take you on a first date. I will buy dinner. I will buy this. But then you get this culture shock. I have to use that term because, again, I have two cultures. But then there's expectations that because I'm the man, yes, I will do this. But then you also have to do whatever I want. Then again, there's a clash because then I'm not coming from that. Since 22, I've lived in a place where even though I'm a woman, I decide what I want. I didn't ask you for anything. You are volunteered.
Yes.
And so I get confused. And, you know, sometimes I'm told, well, you're too Western. But I'm like, okay, I want to date an African man. I am coming back to Africa. I want to live in Africa. But then there's this confusion of cultures. And I'm like, what do you do? Because then you're told you're too westernized. But then I'm like, no, you're confusing me.
No, people, and this is exactly why I'm saying that there must be reciprocity. Because if I'm constantly paying, you owe me.
Hey.
You are what is this? You're a debit. You're an expense. There's nothing that you're bringing in.
But before it becomes a practice, if you're only paying for one meal, why do you think you have all this authority and all? Why are you so entitled to? You bought me one meal.
Precisely my point. Precisely the point that says that so certain practices may seem small, but they nip bigger issues in the bud.
Right.
Because if I've paid for one meal and you are able to say to me, no man, let's go for a picnic. Suddenly I'm not the only one that's paid for one meal or had a system where I've shown that I'm able to cover the both of us. And immediately right there, you are able to also eliminate a man who has formed his manhood around money, which is the most basic load of nonsense that we have been taught. But you are then able to have the conversation with the person to say, okay, we are getting to know each other. I've taken you out on a date. You've taken me out on a date. What do we do going forward? That opens up the conversation to say, how do we view these things? How do we do? But when the expectation is, no, he's going to always pay. Man, this is why these men are also going to come and say that they have ownership now over your body. Because they paid 10,000 shillings for something.
Chips and a drink.
Yeah, and then suddenly, this and that has happened. No, guys. We must also disavow or dispossess ourselves of the notion that women are here for our pleasure. They're not. They have their own purpose. And they have their own things that they're there for. If the woman agrees to go on a date with you, it's not to say that she owes you anything afterwards. Yeah. And we must say that out loud. Even as your cat interrupts your face. But we must be clear that our spaces have got to be mutual. Yeah. And that's a deeply African concept. Women did not come into the home with nothing. This is why we have these gifting ceremonies. It's because the families are showing you that this woman does not come by herself. She comes with the elders, she comes with the talents, she comes with us as the family. And we are here to build with you. If you should decide that you do not want to use the gifts and talents and abilities that are there, that's your choice. But if you're going to eliminate it and say, no, it's fine, there's no way we're going to do this, then you must allow for yourself to also be taught what it is to appreciate the gifts, talents, and abilities of the person. Because we need more people that are going to be like you, Mary. It's important that more women are like you, that say, but you can't tell me that you now own me because you've taken me out on a date.
Because you bought chips.
I mean, really, if you want your money back, I'll give it to you. It's fine.
I've actually done that. Now that you mentioned that, it didn't end well. It did not end well. There was a lot of anger and aggression because, and you know what? listen, when you see a problem, you have to find a solution. So I've been in a situation where I've been told, well, but I bought you drinks, so I bought this, and this is very many years ago. But then I said, I went into my purse immediately and I said, okay, I'm sorry you felt that. And I was being very straight up, I'm sorry you felt that, you feel used because you bought those 2 drinks, and I offered to pay back.
Yeah.
And this man was very aggressive. He was
No,
very
absolutely.
aggressive, and he said he's very disrespected as an African man. So I'm like, so you're complaining that you have bought something that I didn't ask, but I offered to pay it back because I respect you in that sense. And then it's disrespectful to you as an African man. And I need you to tell us how we can bring, because a lot of us are coming back home. This is a fact. And a lot of us are having problems with merging the cultures, because I cannot pretend the last 20 years didn't happen. I have been away for a long time. But how do we bring this? How do I become an African woman, but still be able to respect myself in what I've built for myself?
You are quintessentially African where you are now.
Yeah.
Right. And we must say that out loud.
Thank you.
Because we must also really get to the place where men can understand. Yo, guys, the body of woman is not your playground. It's not, unless he has made it that, then it's not. We cannot, let's just think about this logically. You go and you want this particular woman to go on a date with you. You convince her after a week of talking or whatever to go on the date with you. That's fine. She goes on the date with you. He owes you nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because you decided that you want to go on a date.
Yes.
And you decided that let's go. Fine. At the point of her interest, which is where I am coming in, where she says, I'm interested in you, I want to get to know you, then of course there's reciprocity there. Then she will also say, hey, can we do this? Can we want to do? Fine. But if you are feeling disrespected as an African man, I ask the question, who owes you that respect? What does that respect look like also? Because at some point we need to understand what is oppression and what is respect. And too many of us are passing oppression off as respect, trying to make ourselves feel good about ourselves. No, guys. In fact, if you're a man with dignity, if you're a man with stature and wisdom and you've worked on yourself, the respect will come automatically. Because the woman will be in your presence and will feel, I can't waste this guy's time. I can't, and that energy will say to her, act right, be good, be great, be yourself, be your fullest self. Too many men have an energy that says, please take from me and do nothing for me. And then we demand respect, where our aura is demanding abuse. We are confused. We are completely confused. And we don't want to admit that there's a serious level of confusion here, because the aura is saying one thing and our minds are saying that. No, we must fix it. We must have coherence within the aura, within the body. Because as men, we are really, 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 and this word respect, I don't know how many times I have been asked, even in sessions where one is counseling or it doesn't respect me. And I ask the question, what does that look like, my brother? What actually does that look like? And let's not confuse acts of subservience with respect. Bringing food on a tray to you, kneeling before that's not respect. Like, I can do all of those things and still disrespect you. And you won't know that you're being disrespected because all you've settled on is the bottom layer. And you've said, oh, this is it, that's fine. As long as she brings me food on the tray, as long as she calls me Baba, as long as, so that's all. What about her financial decisions? Do they respect you? What about the way she speaks about the children or speaks about you to the children? Is that respectful? What about the way she speaks to her family? Are you dealing with that, or you just want someone that's going to? And I've asked this question. Maybe we're going to get in trouble for this one podcast. I've asked the question. You are actually looking for a helper in the house, not a wife.
Yes.
So be clear. right? Go and get a helper that will cook for you and clean for you. And then you can do whatever you want. Don't come and bring some poor woman in there or some rich woman in there to come and just do all these domestic chores. No, because we must remove domestication from wifedom, if there is such a thing. Being a wife is not being a maid. It's
But
not
we
so.
have a lot of still a lot of young people, and I was going to ask you, do we have the right age where a person should start dating seriously? Because even at my age, I'm 43, but sometimes I'm like, what is going on here? I've watched this show in Kenya. I don't remember the name, and I think these young people were in their early 20s. So these are people who are young enough to be our children, and I noticed that the girl, was saying, well, where's your money? What kind of job are you doing? So it was one way. So very young people, 20 or 21. So the girl is sitting and she's asking the boy, what do you do for a living? What do you do for money? What do you have a car? And they even get into this exchange, a very heated exchange. And whatever the young girl says is always based on how much wealth this or
Yeah,
money or potential they have to bring in money. And I'm like, they're very, very young. Where does this come from? They're so young. But then so we
yeah.
need to discuss like I don't know, what are these expectations and are they limiting us? Why do they start so early?
Look, thankfully, we must also, you know, be grateful for the multiplicity of views that exist, whether it's on TV or social media or what. There'll always be a Katleho that will come in and say, men are not your ATMs, and they'll never be your ATM. They are human beings first before they are your ATM. So I want to ask you the same question. What are you doing for work? What are you doing as a job? How much money are you making? And if you shut up at that question, then I must say to you, you are clearly very patriarchal. And you need to be with men that are patriarchal, not men that are progressive, right? And you must be okay to be with men that are patriarchal. And when they are patriarchal with you, all you will bring is your body. Keep quiet, must not think, you must pop out babies. And there you have a problem popping out babies, my girl, your body will be completely useless to a patriarchal man. And we must speak those things as directly as possible because we are not marrying wombs, one. We are not marrying maids, two. We are not marrying these subservient creatures. We are marrying human beings. And men have got to treat women as human beings. Women have got to treat men as human beings. We can't get into the space where 20-year-olds are normalizing a behavior that says they must seek the highest bidder. It's fine, go auction yourself somewhere else. And we must be clear that that is exactly what you're doing. And yes, there is space for it. Let's not lie. There's space for it because there are men who will want that. And you can go and do that with those men. But for the men that I would want to associate with, the men that I would want to speak to, are men that are saying we want something deeper than that. There will be those who want to do that. And it's a wonderful thing, social media, because it gives us access to people ordinarily that we would not have access to. You will see a whole host of beautiful women on social media streets. But if you're going to approach the woman and she's going to tell you, well, what's going to be my girlfriend allowance? And, you're going to say, well, I don't give a girlfriend allowance. And she starts, short-circuiting. Then you must know that that's not the person for you. Don't carry on with the conversation.
But
Too
can
many
we can
men.
we can we talk about the economic injustices that are happening? And now we're specifically talking about the African continent that push women. So now women, I'm siding with you. I don't want because I'm gonna get a lot of stones thrown at me. This is why I keep giving this disclaimer. I live in Finland. It's a very different reality. But and now I have to defend my African sisters because I know that it's very hard to get certain jobs. And because I have lived in my home country, I also know that it's very men are always, there are a lot of men, I'm not going to generalize, but there are a lot of men who are looking for an opportunity for a damsel in distress, be it in the professional spaces or just out there in the social spaces, even in the academic spaces. And they are looking for a person whom they can exploit. And this is a reality. So can we at least be honest and say that many of these women who are very transactional are like this because it's their way of, how do I say, they are surviving a system that has been created for them where, they know that, what, I'm not going to get that kind of job even though I have a degree in communications, or I have a degree in engineering. Well, maybe not engineering. In engineering, it's a bit easier than, normal degrees. They're going to really fight for it. And again, I'm going to get some
Absolutely.
stones, but I'm not going to. Anyway, what
No, but
do you think?
and I agree with you completely. We live in the system that we do, right? At an economic level, those categories I spoke about earlier are very much, applicable.
Real, yeah.
The race, the class, the gender,
Yeah.
the triple oppression, as we call here in South Africa, of women, where they're oppressed on all three fronts: on a racial front, a gender front, and a class front. But I think what is also quite interesting for me is those survivalist tools and tactics ought to be for a season, not your whole life. So at some point, you may need to drop that because there's going to come a man who is not transactional with you and genuinely wants to be with you. And then if you're employing those survivalist tactics, you're going to scare away a love that wanted to, right? So I don't have a problem. When we get into the relationship in the beginning, we're all going to show just how hectic, things are in terms of how we are with our wounds and our traumas. And it's almost like we're parading it and the walls are high. But at some point, the walls need to come down. And we need to be able to say, okay, this is what has happened. This is it. This is that. Okay, fine, sure. Then we are able to move forward. But if people are still in survival mode, we have no problems with them. They are still in survival mode and they're going to use survival mode tactics. But when people get to a thriving, more softer mode, then they can't use survival mode tactics in a softer mode. That's not going to work. Yeah. And it goes both ways because there are also men who do the same thing.
Yeah. And now I want to move into reasons why a lot of people are not getting into relationships and getting married, having children like it used to be before. And this is again in Finland, this is very common where women are not having children. They're not necessarily having more than 2 children, and they do decide to do that. So it's very normal here. Like here, yeah. But I think we don't talk about that. There are also a lot more men, and not just on this side, but back home I notice there are men who are not rushing into getting married, having children. They are simply saying, this is not my thing, or yeah, probably not now. What do you think is driving this? Do you think, and I'm talking about men who are, I'm not talking about men who are financially struggling. I'm talking about all kinds of men who are doing very well for themselves, but they're deciding maybe, yeah, I don't want to do this. What do you think is driving? What has changed? Why are people less enthusiastic about getting to relationships?
We love ourselves more. As simple as that. I think we love ourselves more, and it sounds so hectic to actually say out loud. Some of our parents and our grandparents love themselves, but did not have the opportunity to love themselves to the fullest degree in their relationships. And people took on responsibilities that were incredibly hectic. But now, oh, no. I'm not going to have a child if I don't want to have a child. I'm not going to get into marriage if I don't want. And we must allow for that because it's not. So there's no existential crisis as it relates to Black people and the numbers as though we're going to get extinct. No, because there are still women who want to have children with men who want to have children. It's only when we have the mismatch then that we have the problem. But I think that people should be allowed. I'm fascinated because there's a prevailing view that says that women who, don't want to get married, don't want to have children, want to travel the world, will end up very lonely. I'm interested to seeing whether that's actually the truth. And it would be interesting to speak to someone who has never married, didn't have children, in their 60s, and to have a genuine conversation about just that companionship part and whether that does breed a sense of loneliness. We can agree that it's there, but we then also maybe need to agree whether it's debilitating, like in your older years. Is it something that you're looking at people having children and grandchildren around them, where potentially you are in your own flat? Like, to make it clear, you're in your flat, you're 65, you're by yourself, right? As opposed to, and maybe it's your birthday and you're by yourself. Because your friends are doing whatever, as opposed to you're in your flat with your husband, your 3 children, your 15 grandchildren, and their partners, and it's a full house, and you understand. But we then need to get to the space of understanding what is the quality of experience. Because it may just be that you are by yourself in the home, but you have a peace that surpasses the peace of that woman who is with her husband and children and grandchildren. And so we need to someone needs to just do a study on that in order to free younger girls that are probably 15, 16 in rural communities that are being pressured into saying, the man is the be-all and end-all of life. If you're not married, if you're not with a man, you've lost out. And I think that we need to get to a place where we can fast track that sort of view so that a whole host of girls and women understand that men are not the be-all and end-all of your life. They're not. In fact, being with a man is not an achievement. Being with a woman is not an achievement. It is what you achieve together that is the achievement. And once that is sort of more pervasive, then we'll begin to see men that will be forced to upgrade themselves, will be forced to make themselves better, because the woman that will be around them will not tolerate the nonsense that our grandparents or great-grandparents will have tolerated. The woman that will be around them will say that I'm not going to bring you food on a tray. I'm not going to kneel before you, but I deeply respect you. I respect your time. I respect your energy. And if that's going to be a deal breaker for you, then you need to find somebody else.
Yeah.
And if enough women start saying you need to find somebody else, then the trend needs to change. Because then you need to ask yourself, what is your wife outside of being a maid, outside of being the subservient person? And we must give women their agency back. Why is it okay for us to be a group of men that are going to now assault a woman or just do all sorts of things, and we think that it is normal? I think it's our God-given right. Who told you that? And in fact, I don't want anything to do with that God. I told you that as a man, you have the right to just go and be as atrocious of a human being toward a woman and think that that's okay. That is nonsensical at best and just completely bereft of any humanity at worst. And you have men that genuinely believe that women are their plaything, that women are there for their enjoyment. And when we get into discussions with men that hold that view, you see the shock and horror on their face when there's another man who is respected speaking something different. And it's important for our voices to be heard, because patriarchy is not an African concept. It was imported onto the continent. That's my deep belief. We must be clear that the women that are born and bred on the African continent are strong and soft. And we must embrace both sides. Yeah. And you will know the strength, because your own mother, if she was not into gentle parenting as it is the case today, she would beat you. And the beating will travel through your body. But in the same breath, even if she didn't touch you, her words can do the same thing. You've seen her struggle through things. You've seen her achieve things. So we know, and it's the most dissonant thing in the world, because men that abuse, men that will unalive, men that will grape, we must use these words, will have such a high regard for their own sisters and their own mother.
Yes, yes, yeah.
But will have a deep disdain for every other female in the world. And I'm trying to understand what makes your mother, your sister so special.
Because their mother stayed. Because there's this conversation online where a lot of men are shouting, we want women who are like our mothers. We want women who are like our mothers. Your mother, the reason why you want a woman like your mother while being a disrespectful man is because your mother was probably disrespected and stayed. It's because even though she was married, she still suffered and didn't leave. So this is what they want us to do. But we are saying, hey, wait a minute. No, things have changed. I have these options. I can go to work, I can buy land, or I can do this. So I am saying, come to me as a human being, not a maid. So I think, we have a lot of people who are getting into relationships based on lies. You meet a person who's like this, but you think you can turn them into your maid. You know very well, I will not stand in the kitchen all day cleaning for you, doing whatever, but you want me to be that because your mother was that. Your mother didn't have the same options as I do. Your mother didn't have to go to school all these years, probably, but I did, and I want something from that. So I think, again, I think it's just people, we don't understand. You mentioned this before. We don't understand what African love looks like because we've had all this experiences, contamination, mix up, identity crisis and everything. So we do not understand. And it's not about that we are saying that this was perfect or this was this, but why can't we evolve together and still be able to hold close our cultures? We can change what needs to be changed, but we need to keep the foundation of what works or what worked. But we cannot oppress each other. We need to stop oppressing each other. And we need to be honest with one another.
We don't want to stop because we enjoy the power. And this is why we must stop these power dynamics. This is why we speak about mutual submission. This is why we must get rid of the language that says the man is the head of the home. We must get rid of that language.
Wow.
We must both be heads in this home. We've got to both have sectors and areas of responsibility. I'm not the only head in my home, even as a polygamous child. Can't be. That's too much pressure. You're asking me to die slowly every day. And this is why the mental health of men is such a very serious problem. Being a man is a risk factor for depression, suicidal ideation. In some countries, that's your gender. It's a risk factor. We don't even need to get into anything else. And it's because we put so much unnecessary pressure. Unnecessary pressure on ourselves financially, unnecessary pressure on ourselves relationally. Someone told you that, no, this is what needs to happen. You've got to be this kind of person. These are the expected. No. If there's nothing that the men that will be listening to this will hear, I need men to live their own lives. I need women to live their own lives. Not the lives that society puts for you, but for you to actually make the choices that you make for you, for your purpose, for your well-being, not for the well-being of everybody else. Because we are stuck in a system today where everyone else has told you what's good for you, and you've taken it, and you found out that it's not good for you. But because everyone else has taken the same bad medicine, you feel like you can't speak up. But everyone is suffering by it. Using the same expired, rotten medicine, but they're making you take it. They're making you take paycheck. They are making you take this view of women. They are making you take this view of yourself. We can see the people that are giving it to you are chronically ill, critically ill. But we take it. Why?
Hi. We need to go back to the basics. And I think if anyone has any questions, Falasade has said, but some men derive pleasure in being the head. they use it as a tool for subjugation for their rights. And I've also had something else I'm going to add to that, where some men have said that they believe that they probably have to have the most education or the best education, and they have to be the most intelligent between you two. So, what do you think about that?
Utter rubbish.
Oof.
I'm sorry. Like, utter rubbish. What? Oof. Utter rubbish. You can't. Like, no. You are insecure. There is no vulnerability within you. You're refusing to learn. Those are the things that I'm getting from the men that will say that. Because why do you, and also, how do we know that you're the smartest in the room? Has it even been proven? Yeah, just because you've got a doctorate or a PhD in something doesn't mean you're smart. So you're going to date someone who just has their high school certificate, but reasons better than you, thinks better than you. And now you're going to be threatened. You're going to be threatened. Hey, as men, everything threatens us. Finances of women threaten us. Intellect of women threaten us. Career trajectory of women threaten. You see, this is why the system is not working. And we want to keep this. Everything is just a threat. At what point are we going to celebrate things? At what point are we going to be proud of the fact that, oh, my wife is a CEO? Yes, I'm a mid-level exec, but my woman is a CEO and I'm proud of her. Why does that sound so wrong? Why does it sound bad to say? As though, oh, you've really failed at the Life Olympics. Your wife is a CEO. What a failure of a man you are. How does that work? Like, oh no, my wife is the president of the country. I'm the first gentleman. And to really revel in that. And I'm yet to see a person that actually revels in that and enjoys it. Like, doesn't have to answer weird questions of, oh, so your wife is the one that wears the pants. They look better on her anyway. But what do you want me to do? It's fine. I sometimes wear kurtas and dresses, but everything looks better on her as well. So that's fine. What were you thinking needs to happen here? Oh, but your wife earns more than you. Yes, she does. And I was telling someone that it would be nice for me to actually say that, one of the partners that I have bought me a car. I would be completely unashamed. And people will look at me weirdly and say, but yeah, why are you doing that? It's nonsense. Why is it right when women do it? So if the woman says, oh, but my husband bought me a car, our husband bought us a house, why is that correct? Why is that? So you actually don't want patriarchy to end. You are telling me that it's fine when you benefit, but when you are not, no. I want it everywhere. You might not end. We must benefit, you must benefit, we must all be egalitarian and fine. We must get to the space where women are able to buy their husbands' houses. They must be able to buy their husbands presents for being fathers in the same way that husbands buy push presents. Like everything. And I'm not speaking, for a sameness. And I know that some of the examples I'm making for a lot of people seem very outlandish. And that's okay. There's a point why I'm doing it in that way. Because I'm drawing the caricature so that we can see just how dodgy it is when we demand certain things, but we don't want to go the full way, Women have incredible talents, incredible abilities, and they have incredible functions, as do men. But those functions are not decided by gender, they're decided by ability. And there's a key distinction there. Because if we decide them by gender, there are going to be some men that come, like me, very soft hands. I'm not the guy at a event where I'm going to pull the ropes for the tent and pull the cow into the house and make sure that everything. I'm not that guy. I've told people I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy. If there were to be a rat or a snake in the house, that's my wife taking care of it. You'll find me on top of the bed. I am the guy that is on top of the bed. Okay? I am that guy. And I have no qualms admitting that. I have no issues. I've now only recently gotten to a place where a gecko doesn't scare me and I can deal with it. But for years, the gecko was it was the hill. Mary. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, no, he's not that guy.
So you're not changing the tire. You're not going to change the tire.
I can change it. I can change it because I know how to change it, and it's fine. But if she did a better job, I would sit in the car or sit on the side of the road. We must allow the people to do what they are good at, no matter who is doing it.
Yeah.
By the way, and there are things that my family even knows. Katleho is not the guy for in some places, townships or villages, when there's a funeral, then all the men are wearing overalls. I bought an overall, Mary, just to have it. Not that it's going to get dirty with paint and anything. No, it's not. My overall is very clean. I must just say, it's very clean overall. And I want to buy the safety boot as well. It's just to complete the look. But really, it's just to complete the look. I'm not the guy that's going to be found hanging the light from the tent there so that the people and no. But call me for spiritual work. Absolutely. Any day, all day. We recently buried a grandmother of mine, and I was the one leading the body into the home. There were traditional rites that I was observing. I was leading that. And in some societies, that would be a female's job because it would be assumed that the female is closer to spiritual things. But I'm that person. And even after that, I bought my knife and I was chilling with the ladies as they were chopping. And I was chopping. And there was nothing wrong. Because also, we have women in the family that want to fix the tent and they want to knock in the stuff for the hammers and all. We must allow people to be exactly who they are. We cannot continue with gendered roles. It doesn't work that way. It does not work.
I see that Falashade is having a question. I think you can read it. I think it's for you. And as you read it, I will add a comment and say that.
Where do I read the questions? Because
it's click where at the bottom, right? There's a little what do you call it? There's a little chat feature at the bottom on the bottom left.
I don't see that. I think you do.
I can read it. I can read the question for you. So they say that they're married to a very great man. The husband is from a high cultural family, supports her education and career, but sadly, they're having serious issues currently because she is assertive, and she's also questioning some cultural practices that she finds weird. And so she wants to get your advice. Are you from Nigeria? What culture? Maybe you could have some context to what cultural practices they are.
Okay, he supports the education and career.
But she's not okay with some cultural Yoruba. She's Yoruba.
Okay.
Yoruba. Yeah.
And okay, so it seems that there are certain things that have already been sort of not one, but really are there in the sense that the problem is assertiveness and questioning. So I maybe let me also be gentle with this, and let me try to be clear. Paula Sade, I think it is then. What is critical for us to acknowledge is that not everyone is going to be on the same journey. And some people will find certain questions offensive in general. Not because they actually are, but because you're threatening their identity. And when you threaten their identity with such bravado and assertiveness, you are threatening them and you become a literal threat because the mind doesn't know the difference between an emotional threat and a physical threat. The response is going to be the same. So my advice to you would always be gentleness and curiosity. That the questions are not framed as, oh, but you guys have this rod that you're holding the whole time and you dip it in water and then you spray it all over us. Oh, we don't like that. Perhaps the question could be, what is that rod for? And do they have to spray it on all of us or just you guys? What is the symbolism there? Because then you show the curiosity, you show the willingness to want to learn. And once the answer has been given, then you can question the symbolism to say, is that still necessary? Do you know why this thing is happening? Or are you just following because you were following? And it's fine, we'll follow, but I'd like you to think about what that means. And that conversation often produces fruit where the person is able to come back and say, I don't even know why we do half the things we do. But let's figure this out together. Do we actually want to carry them on? Because you've raised some very good points. And I never thought about these things. But that's a vulnerable conversation that requires that gentleness. So please be assertive on things that could hurt your family and protect the family. But let's also understand that we are not each other's enemy. And we don't need to fight each other. We're fighting the problem. We are not the problem. We're fighting the problem. In fact, the problem is the cultural practices. So fight back, or be assertive around, or be grounded around that, not around your husband. I don't think your husband is the problem. I don't even think you are the problem. I hope that makes sense. Folasade, you'll be able to type in the chat again whether I'm making sense or not.
I want to add something more to that, especially because, again, I live far away from home. I'm one of the people who thinks that it's okay for Africans from different cultures to marry, to date, and everything. But I want to know your advice. When you have two people coming from, they're both African or from the African diaspora, so because this is about the African diaspora, it's not just about the continent. But if you have two people from two, because we're not exactly the same, how do we prepare to come into relationships and in a way that honors our histories, not just one, but how do we prepare for that to make sure that we're not clashing?
Yeah, I think curiosity. We've got to be curious about each other. We've got to be curious around our practices. We've got to be curious about why we do the things that we do. How do we do them? We've got to get excited about sitting around the table and discussing these things. Because if we're not curious, I'm going to bring my version and my version will be the version. And now you're frustrated. But when we're curious, we're able to say, okay, we're having a child. Well, how are we going to raise this child? And then you're able to openly say, let's experiment. Let's experiment and then let's see. Like with this one, let's try this. And then we see that maybe not. Second born, we'll try something else, or whatever the case might be. But curiosity is very important. Yes, I know you know your culture, you know what you came with, but come in there with a blank slate. Come in there ready to learn, ready to integrate, ready to question, ready to absorb. And when we come in like that, we then also find that there are things that we really admire about other places, other cultures. But when we come in with a view of wanting to subjugate, there's nothing that's beautiful about other people that you want to subjugate. And that was the colonizers' issue, is there was nothing beautiful about us.
That's very true. And you mentioned curiosity, and I know you cannot go into a relationship with someone from a different culture when you don't have that curiosity, when you're not able to also humble yourself and know that you cannot always be the center. For example, we all come from very, very proud communities as Africans. This is well known. It doesn't matter whether you are from the Agikuyu community or you are the Amazulu. It doesn't matter. We are very proud people. But I've learned, especially through this work that I do, I've learned, you know what, I can be an Agikuyu woman, and I can still be able to love other people and appreciate other people. But that takes work to know when to be silent, to know when to let the other person take the center, and to know even when to say, you know what, I'm sorry that the way we have perceived you has been wrong, or it has harmed you as a community. It's just you have to be able to be very curious and just be all this beautiful thing. So I'm really happy. And Polashade says that yes, thank you very much. I like your reply and I will work with it. So I'm happy that we shared something with someone from the Yoruba community, and this is what it's all about. And I wish we had more time, but now I need for us to. I think we've covered everything because we had
Yes.
three main topics that we wanted to cover. The first one was purpose-driven being. So this is emotional intelligence and healthy expression of manhood and womanhood. The second thing was masculine and feminine unification, how to explore the psychological spiritual dynamics with definitions about the energies that we foster to come together as genders. And the last one was the evolving family unit, talking about the historical and modern context of family structures, gender roles, polygamy, and also exploring the impacts of community and individual growth within this certain setting. So I think we've covered all these topics, but now I need for us to give us some conclusion so we can close this, just focusing on everything we've discussed. What you would advise us moving forward as people who are coming into relationships together as African people, not just one culture.
Embrace the complexity of people and of yourself. That's, I think, quite important. Number two, understand that you are. So there are people who say that you're only as good as your last game when you're in the sports space. In the relational space, you're only as good as the way you understand your partner, and your partner is evolving. So as you evolve, as they evolve with them. Like, because you can't be the guy that understood me 10 years ago and you think that that's still okay today. That's not going to work. So embrace the complexity, embrace the evolution, but also understand, I think, that the problems are the problems, not you. And if you are the problem, fix yourself quickly. Because the final thing that I want to say is thriving and healthy relationships are fantastic. They are worth the effort. They are worth the tears and the grinding it out and the weight and all of these things. They are indeed fantastic things that we've got to hold on to, because within the context of healthy and thriving relationships, we have people that are able to reach their fullest potential. They are able to get to the best versions of themselves. And they're able to also, within that context, if so choosing, raise children who are going to just be the best versions of themselves as well. So let's not give up on these relationships, particularly the heterosexual relationships, because we are being made to fight in these gender wars, as it were, at a heterosexual sense. So that's my spiel. This work is very deep. It is very, very moving. It is very, 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 very depleting, because you are giving of yourself. You are giving of the essence, So I appreciate it. And I appreciate the people that are going to be watching and listening. And I hope that this community will grow even more than where it is now, because your work is important. And we want to also bless you, Mary, that the work of your hands would be absolutely appreciated, that your name would be mentioned in rooms, that it needs to be mentioned in, that you would be blessed in the field, that you would be blessed in the home, that you would be blessed as your feet touch the ground, that you would be blessed as you sleep, that the work of your hands is protected in every way possible, and indeed that you would make your ancestors very proud, and that they too would protect their work, and their biggest work is you. So thank you so much for the
and that they send the right African man to me. None of these games that we talked about.
Absolutely. We are here now to veto him. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As I said, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I really respect you. I respect the work you're doing. And I love the consistency you've been having. You meet people like almost every evening, I think. Every time I'm getting a notification, you have a meeting. And I always listen as I'm doing whatever I'm doing in the evening, cooking, eating, whatever. And we really, really appreciate you. And I'm really happy that it was easy to get you here. It was so easy. And I was like, what? So you're inspiring a lot of people, and continue guiding us and continue also learning with us, because this is the one thing that makes you special. you are not the kind of person who comes in commanding people, doing all these things. You come as an equal. You come as an equal, but you come with wisdom, and you come with a lot of humanity. So thank you so much, Asante Sana. And
Thank you so
let's
much.
do this again.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you.
Yes.
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
everyone, for coming.
Indeed. Thank you. Cheers then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.